make sure to follow us on Instagram at Whistlethrowers. It's a great way to interact with our show. Our DMs are always open for questions, topic discussions, and more. You will be able to find our new episodes and other announcements there. But why is this guy allowed to play basketball on an NBA court right now?
All right, thanks for tuning back into the Whistlethrowers podcast. This is Jack Mobar, joined by
Jack Slaymaker.
So we are freezing our asses off right now, so it's going to be a quick podcast, but what better way to start it than talking about Josh Giddey?
Yeah, I mean, just a really ugly situation for him. I don't feel bad for him at all. If this is true, I will feel bad if this was made up and someone kind of schemed it on him. But in my opinion, this looks to be true, and the allegations, in my opinion, are based on fact. And it's pretty disgusting that guys like this are allowed to play. And I understand not suspending him or fining him at the moment while you do an investigation, but why is this guy allowed to play basketball on an NBA court right now? It's so disgusting, and the fact that guys like Giddey and Miles Bridges and countless others who have beaten and done terrible things to women and children in the past just get a pass because they are athletes. And when are we going to start taking the initiative on protecting people like that? And not people like Josh Giddey, people that get abused by athletes and other people. When are we going to set the precedent that those people are victims? Because right now it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, it's just like from a non-allegation standpoint, like it's just so awkward like having him play basketball right now. Like his teammates don't even know what to think about him right now. Like that's just you're creating such a weird dynamic, and that's like hurting the chemistry so much for the team. Like he really should be away from the team. Yep. Like innocent or guilty, like just keep him away until we know exactly what happened.
Agreed.
This is what the Rays did so well, and what Major League Baseball has done so well with the Wander Franco allegations, is the moment that he was accused of doing something like very similar to what Josh Giddey's accused of, he was immediately not allowed to start in the Rays game, and then later that day was removed from their active roster, and then basically like 2 days later he was put on the 60-day suspension list. I don't know why basketball, the NBA, doesn't have a similar policy to Major League Baseball, which in my opinion has been the most forward-thinking league in terms of sexual abuse, sexual assault with suspensions. And I think that the NBA, the NFL needs to look at similar policies. And the NHL as well, who has also been having really bad problems with sexual abuse.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, it's any type of misconduct. I think the MLB handles it well. And then I think the NFL and NBA specifically do a terrible job with misconduct of any kind. Frank, I mean, I'm never going to stop watching, but frankly, it does disgust. Like, I didn't watch the Thunder Sixers game, not strictly because of what he did, but more the fact that that's all I would be thinking about watching that game and watching him on the floor. It's all I would be thinking about, and it's so negative that it turned me away from it. And I'm pretty sure tons of people felt the same way. I would be disgusted and appalled as a Thunder fan. I mean, I don't know how I would watch my team play with that guy on the floor right now.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to stay tuned and see what happens with that. But we did have a full slate of Thanksgiving games with the NFL on a more positive notes. It's easy to start with the Packers-Lions. Lions continue to have bad juju going into Thanksgiving games, and we thought it was going to be different this year because they're like kind of a legitimate contender right now. Yeah. But Jordan Love and the Packers have been increasingly hot within the last couple weeks, and they look like they're starting to mesh, especially Christian Watson. This was his come-out game of the season. He eclipsed 20 fantasy points for the first time in I don't know how long. And yeah, is this more that like the Packers are like finally finding their way like with an identity with themselves, or is this just like we need to tamper expectations on the Lions?
I think it might be a little bit of both. See, the thing is, I think the Lions have a good offense. I think they have an offense that can compete with most NFL offenses. But their defense is so shaky and so Swiss cheese right now that they weren't even able to stop a Packers offense, like you said, that hadn't found an identity all year. And they allowed Green Bay really to find an identity. And like the thing is, with a young QB like Love, we saw it with Hurts in 2021. Like they're going to take some time to find their way. I mean, Love was stellar on Thanksgiving, but not to take anything away from him. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson has he unimpressed you guys? Like he's unimpressed me this season.
He's unimpressed me a lot. He had a great like first 4 games, but then I just didn't hear anything about him after that.
He hasn't like taken the leap that I really expected him to take into like an elite edge rusher or a solidified number 1 edge rusher. And the thing, like, I don't think that Aiden Hutchinson is an elite edge rusher in this league. I don't think he will be. I think he's a very solid and good edge rusher. But I think you need someone next to him on the other side that's going to be able to get pressure more consistently, because with a secondary that's dealt with injuries and just had some pretty bad play this year, I think that you need that stellar pass rusher. I think Ali McNeil has had a great year. I think he's been a better defensive player than Aiden Hutchinson. And I'd even argue that Brian Branch is getting pretty close to that too. Because he's been really good since coming back.
He's a dark horse for defensive rookie of the year.
I agree, yeah. Because, I mean, in the same breath, like Jalen Carter had a great 4 games to start. And then it's like, it's not that he's been bad or anything, but it just, like, you expected the elevation to continue, and it's kind of plateaued this year. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that defensive rookie of the year is a little bit open.
Mm-hmm. Jordan Carter, it's still his reward to lose.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Aiden Hutchinson's definitely had a down year, but I think when you look at the year he had last year, it makes sense for a lot of guys to go through sophomore slumps. Like, it happens to a lot of different players, regardless of position. So I'm not too worried about him. I will say that, to me, Jordan Love has started to prove that he should be the starter next year for the Green Bay Packers. Whether or not they stick with him long term, I think he still has to play a couple more seasons. But I am comfortable being the Packers saying that this is the guy to roll with next year, because he has started to look really good. And he's had a couple really, really good games, and this was one of them against a Lions team that is, even though they have struggled on Thanksgiving games in the past, it is still a very good Lions team. And the Packers needed a win like this, and to get it at this point in the season is huge for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you, Aiden. And like, I definitely think the Packers should move with Jordan Love. The thing that kind of sucks for them is they're not going to have too many years with him on a rookie contract.
Right.
He actually just signed his extension this offseason, right? It was a 1 year, I think, for next year. So this was his last year of his rookie deal, and you're going to have to start paying him. And I do think $10 million a year is a good number for him now. But if he continues to elevate his game next year, you're going to have to be paying close to top dollar for him.
I'm really surprised he even did an extension. I wouldn't want to do it if I was him. Like, I would just want to get money right away. He
definitely did it because he didn't want to be playing as on a pending contract, and that I think the Packers were kind of handcuffed, and they did it the right way. I think getting him a 1 year, $10 million is a good start for him. And
he needed a prove it year.
Totally.
My opinion.
Yeah, and I'm looking in their wins. He puts up good numbers in wins, and it seems like in some of the other games they've lost, he struggled. But I think when things are going right, I think he is a good quarterback, and eventually it will build to where he wins you games.
Yeah, the only bad game he really had was the Vegas game.
Yeah, really.
I'll tell you that, like, he's had games where he hasn't been great, but that was his only game that, like, was really, really bad. Like, 3 out of his 10 interceptions was in that one game.
Yeah.
So get rid of that, and his stats look a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah. I think you guys think it's cool to skip over the Commanders Cowboys?
Yeah, we don't have to talk too much on that.
No.
It was a blowout.
Kind of expected.
Not much on the Niners Seahawks game either, but like Brock Purdy didn't have a good game, and like Geno, like his insanity run ended last season, and like me personally, I thought the Seahawks were gonna be like the 6th or 7th seed, but I don't know now. Like I would give the edge to like the Packers or like other teams like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're kind of on a slippery slope right now. I was very, very surprised that they didn't really put up a fight in that game. It seemed like they were maybe going to get it close there in the third quarter, and then Well, I think Gino threw a pick there in that third quarter or maybe they lost a fumble. I can't remember, but I was very unimpressed with them. And I agree with you that like there are some teams I'm looking at here that are 5-6, like New Orleans, Rams, Packers. And then I think that them playing desperate is better than what Seattle is doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seattle's upcoming schedule too, like they're in the middle of a gauntlet schedule where they've got the 49ers in 2 games, the other 2 are the Cowboys and Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a brutal schedule. Yeah,
and it doesn't get too much easier after that either because Tennessee, I don't know if I consider them a layup.
No, they're sneaky, and the Steelers' offense looked really improved this week.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
The only game that I would say is a guaranteed win is Arizona, and that's the last game of the season.
And even that one, I'm like, Arizona might be playing for pride, and I always feel like those games are scary for teams that are fighting for a playoff spot.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk about the Dolphins and Jets because the Jets football is just sad.
Abysmal.
It's so sad.
I feel terrible for that defense.
Yeah.
I know they didn't have a good game, but...
All got a pick 6.
Yeah, that was like...
That's it.
Yeah, and it didn't really seem like Miami's offense, like, was just moving at will, like Tua threw 2 picks, and like it seemed like they were giving their offense some chances that just dwindled. And that the interception pick 6 at the end of the second half, or at the end of the first half, that was really cool. I thought that like those moments, whether the game is like non-meaningful or a huge game, I love those moments that you can look back on.
It turned the entire momentum of the game.
Yeah, it did.
At that point, it was still 10-6, and the way the Jets defense were playing, they could have still possibly pulled out a win. The moment they threw that pick 6, 17-6 at halftime, there was no way they were going to come back.
Yeah, right. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. So you guys talked about it. The Steelers looked pretty good against the banged-up Bengals. I will say Jake Browning played slightly better than I thought he was going to.
Me too.
I had 0 expectations for him, having 0 starts under his belt. Mm-hmm. I won't say that the Steelers' offense looks great now, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all on Kenny, though, at this point, because, like, we could talk about Matt Canada all day, but, like, he needs to be the one that, like, improve the offense.
Yeah, and he definitely did. Like, I know he didn't throw for any touchdowns, but he was super efficient moving the ball.
I said this last week. Like, you can't even guarantee touchdowns out of him.
Yeah, right. But he was efficient with the ball, and he threw for a ton of yards. He didn't put the ball in harm's way. He didn't lose a fumble. He didn't turn the ball over. Like, I thought he played a really clean game, and it's like, it's almost poetic justice that the Steelers never had a 400-yard game under Matt Canada, and then the second they fire him, the very next game, they finally eclipsed 400 yards. That was pretty cool to see for me because Mike Tomlin deserves it, honestly. He's been getting so much out of this group, and they were held back, I feel like, by bad coaching. Not Mike Tomlin's fault, but Matt Canada's running the offense, and Mike Tomlin is a defensive coach. I think Matt Canada was holding that team back, and I'm happy for Mike Tomlin.
Here's something that's really, really interesting. The Steelers had not fired a coach in the middle of the season before this since 1943.
Yep. And it was the guy that fired himself, right?
Yeah.
And it was Bert Bell, and that was when they were the Steagles, I believe. So he fired himself because basically the team was combined, and they, due to financial reasons, they were awful. So he took himself out of it, later became the owner of the Eagles, back to the owner of the Eagles, but still pretty crazy that's been that long.
Yeah.
Since it was about a coaching change. And it was needed. And I don't want to drag on Matt Canada too much because I do feel bad for him. And I don't think it's totally his fault, but at the end of the day, a change needs to be made, and the change seemed to work out for the Steelers. So we'll see if their improvement continues as the season goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can move into the second best game of the week, the Jaguars-Texans. So this was the matchup for that division for the year, and I thought the Texans were going to come in and handle business, but a missed field goal prevented overtime and made the Jets the front runner to win the division, or the Jags, not the Jets. Thoughts on the game, though, other than that?
Yeah,
I mean, CJ played well.
Yeah, they both did. My point was going to be that we have a true QB duel, 2 games every year for the foreseeable future in the AFC South, because those 2 QBs are great.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm incredibly impressed with both of them, especially CJ Stroud. I think that the strides he's making as a rookie it's really, really rare. I haven't seen a rookie QB play this well since Patrick Mahomes. Well, he wasn't even a rookie. It was his first year starting. So again, it just adds to the impressiveness of what CJ Stroud is doing. I mean, another game over 300 yards, doesn't throw a pick, 2 touchdowns. Him and Tank Dell have one of the best connections in the league.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I mean, it's
Nico Collins outplayed him though.
No, I know.
My fantasy guy.
My fantasy guy is Tank Dell. He's won me the past couple weeks too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been great. Like, I think that Tank Dell and CJ Stroud has been a top 10 QB wide receiver duo this year. I don't think there's much argument to it either.
Yeah. The biggest thing for the Texans for me, their defenses look much improved. CJ Stroud is the front runner to win Rookie of the Year. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit worried about Dameon Pierce. Mm-hmm. And I get it. Like, as I said, there's guys that go through sophomore slumps, but his fall off from last year is really concerning for me.
Yeah, it'll be studied in history books. But do you not trust Devin Singletary?
I mean, here's the thing. I do trust Singletary, and Singletary is having a much better year. But I would go with the guy that was really, really good last year, who was your rookie, the guy that you sort of figured to be one of your centerpieces for your offense. And that's not a knock against Devin Singletary, who as I said, has been really, really good. I'm just a little bit surprised that they're not going with Pierce more than they have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially when Dameon Pierce was the only thing really that looked good on your team last year. I mean, Stingley looked better as the year went on, but he still like Dameon Pierce was almost a top 5 running back just for the season last year, and I don't really know why they're not using him so much. And see, the thing is, I would have the same take on this that with Tyler Algier on the Falcons if they didn't draft Bijan Robinson, and that was the thing. I would say Tyler Algier rushed for 1,000 yards last year, and then you took a running back in the top 10 that you don't use. Yeah. It's so stupid, but that's not really the case with this situation. I just think I agree with you. I think the sophomore slump has been real with Dameon Pierce.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Singletary really wasn't used a lot with the Bills last year, so I'm surprised that the Texans made him more of the focal point this year on the offense over Pierce.
Yeah, right. And the thing is, they got away from the run in this game. I think it was only 11. Let me check it. Yeah, 11 combined carries for Pierce and Singletary. I mean, Stroud had 6 too, and he's the QB. They needed a running game to lean on there, and they couldn't get it. I'd be very concerned.
Yeah. I'm not going to talk about the Bucks and Colts because that game means nothing for the NFL. You did mention the Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson thing. The three of us talked about this earlier in the group chat for fantasy. I'm just going to vent a little bit. This was the worst fantasy pick, second worst fantasy pick I ever made. Cooper Kupp this year was the worst. Second was Bijan Robinson, 4th overall in practically all my leagues. I just don't understand, why you would. I get, you said it, Algier rushed for 1,000 yards last year, but from a talent basis, Bijan is the 3rd best running back in this league.
Yeah, that's the thing. I didn't want to argue that. I was just saying, my only thing is, Arthur Smith. Yeah, definitely did not want to draft Bijan Robinson. Definitely, he said, "I have a 1,000 yard rusher. Get me a premium position there." They had Jalen Carter sitting right there, and he's the defensive rookie of the year, and it was so stupid of them to take Bijan Robinson there. And I was saying this all the way up through the draft. You don't take a running back top 10. If you want to be a successful team in this NFL, you do not take a running back in the top 10. And I know they won, and we're kind of bashing on them, but I'm looking. Robinson had a great game. 16 for 91, 5.7 average.
Yeah.
So did Tyler Algier, 10 for 64. He 6.4 per carry.
Derek Carr threw to the Falcons 3 times.
And so did Ritter. Ritter was trying to lose you that game, and I feel like this game was handed to them.
Yeah, it was.
It was. And I feel wow, I didn't even realize Cordero Patterson ran 8 times for 43 for 5.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. And the thing is, you're struggling at so many other spots. Bates was a good move. He's had a good year, like very quietly. I like Okuda too. I like that they got him. But I'm looking down. They drafted Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State, I think 18th overall 1 or 2 years ago. He hasn't done anything for you. And I mean, there's just not anything on this defense that moves you. I just don't understand why they didn't go for that when they had the top 10 pick last year. And now you're sitting at 500.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be getting 10 to 20, somewhere in that range. And
yeah.
You had a huge opportunity.
They would have had a great defensive line with Grady Jarrett, Calais Campbell, and Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's the knock to me isn't on Bijan, who's having a good season. I think there's just too many weapons. And I get that the red zone offense hasn't looked good, but I think that's part of the issue is that when you have so many options, you can use guys as decoys. You can go to other guys for touchdowns. And I think that's the issue is that they, like you guys said, they drafted at the wrong position.
Yeah.
And I think most people were kind of confused why the Falcons did it, unless they're going to use Bijan as the true number one. And outside of the last couple of weeks, that hasn't really been the case. Now, they have started to use it more in the last 2 weeks, like you said, Slide. So maybe it's starting to change a little bit. Maybe Arthur Smith realizes that he needs to get Bijan involved or else his job might be in jeopardy.
Yeah.
But besides that, that would be the only reason why he's using it at this point. Because it made no sense why he wasn't before now.
Yeah, I want to say, too, like, I think Arthur Smith wasn't using Bijan almost to, like, spite his GM for taking him. And it's like, that's so dumb.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
We didn't get an adequate explanation out of that one game where he had one carry.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's unexcusable.
It really is. And, like, I actually like what their offense did. Like, although Ritter threw 2 picks, I like what they did with, like you handed the ball off almost 30 times, and it was almost dead even with more to Bijan between him and Algier.
Like, going to win you games with having Ritter as your quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
you need
like,
to get the ball out of his hands.
You said the red zone, like they're terrible in the red zone. It's because of Ritter. He turns the ball over in the red zone.
And like, I don't understand how you can be bad in the red zone with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson on your offense. Well, the thing is, when Desmond Ritter is your quarterback, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to struggle a bit, but you can design plays to make it easier on Ritter. And that's the thing. You take away Robinson in the red zone. When you decide to use Kyle Pitts as a decoy, you're taking away 2 of the best options.
Yeah.
So basically, Ritter has no one to go to except Drake London every single time. And it's not going to be hard for defenses to figure that out if me, a guy that doesn't really know a whole lot about coaching the NFL, can figure that out.
Yeah. Right.
I think we can move into the Patriots and Giants game really quick. Tommy DeVito is like 2-1 in his like 3 starts. And we kind of beat that to a dead horse last week, that the whole Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito debate. But the new question I will ask is Mac Jones' career as a starting quarterback in this league over?
I don't know yet. I was so impressed with him in 2021, and I was fine with him last year. I didn't think he necessarily lost them games, but I also didn't think he did enough. And this year, he's straight up losing them games.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a decline this bad from a quarterback, really. I thought he was going to elevate his game after year 1. He really hasn't done that. And honestly, I would be leaning towards he's probably done as a starter in the league. It just doesn't look like he can make the plays that are necessary for a starting quarterback to make. Yeah.
Like, I feel like everyone says that, like, it's not really his fault because of his line and the weapons, but, like, you have Ramondre Stevenson. Like, you have, I know Juju's not having a great year, but, like, he's there. Demario Douglas goes off sometimes. Like, you have Ezekiel Elliott, Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki. Like, you have weapons. Like, I think I am buying into the decline and saying that, like, his time is up, and it's really surprising because I thought he was going to be like a consistent Pro Bowler after his rookie year.
Me too. And like, the Pro Bowl is fairly easy to make in the NFL. Like, I'm not trying to bash it, but people opt out and things like that. There are injury replacements. So, like, it's fairly easy to make it. Like, Tyler Huntley made the Pro Bowl as the Ravens quarterback.
Yeah, that won't happen again.
Yeah,
that will not happen again.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Like, it's not necessarily that I expected Mac Jones to be top 5 or even top 10 really, but not this incompetent.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't love Mac Jones when he was drafted. I thought that this was the best fit for him because if anyone could coach a quarterback that can't really move around the pocket, it would be Bill Belichick. And the first year worked great. And ever since then, I feel like that Belichick's coaching system has not kept up with the way the league has gone. And I didn't think that it would change as quickly as it did. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been the biggest detriment to Mac Jones and the Patriots, is that the league changed so quickly in the 4 years that Brady left, that I don't think anyone was prepared for it for the Patriots. And they just assumed the old style of the way that they played would continue to succeed, and it just hasn't.
Do you feel like that's why some guys, like regardless of positions in the league, are kind of slumping?
I think it might have something to do with it. I was thinking about this earlier today, especially with Brady's comments recently about the talent, because I think the talent is there. I think part of the issue is some of the coaches. When you look before the last 3 years, there had only ever been 3 coaches from 1976 to 2019 that were fired within their first year coaching. Since 2020, 2021, 22, 23, there's been at least one coach fired all 3 of those years. It was Urban Meyer, Frank Reich this year, and I forget who the
Frank
coach
Reich
was.
last year.
When you look at it like that, there is a bit of a coaching issue, and I think that some of it also goes down to offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily bad coaches. I think that they're just stuck. Same thing that I said about some of the players. They're stuck in the old style of coaching, and some of these newer coaches, like McVay and Sirianni and Doug Peterson, the 49ers coaches, Shanahan as well, and DeMeco Ryans with the Texans, these newer coaches have figured out how to work with the new style players, and the older coaches that haven't worked with the new style players aren't succeeding as much, and therefore they're hurting the players as well. So I think it's sort of a whole shift of new versus old, and some people need to adjust or else they're going to go away.
Yeah, and eventually, like, all those coaches you brought up are going to have trees and predecessors that extend from their team to other teams and get head coaching jobs and things like that. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, these older coaches and their trees are going to be weeded out of the league for a new style, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Like, I'm fine with where the game is at. I mean, I know there has been somewhat of a talent drop off, but honestly, I'm also incredibly impressed with a lot of the talent in the league, and I'm pleased with where the league is. Like, I think I'm more worried about the game of basketball than I am about the professional football league.
Yeah, That's the thing. I think for football, the talent's there. It just needs, some of these guys need to put it together. Like Trevor Lawrence, he's a really, really talented quarterback, but for him to have 7 interceptions, only 12 touchdowns, I think he just needs to figure it out a little bit more. Yeah. But these guys have talent. I agree with you with the NBA. There definitely is a talent drop-off, and that does concern me.
Well, I don't think there's a talent drop-off in the NBA. I just think there's a anti-work sentiment in the NBA, and there's just like, you really see, like, I can name like 10 guys that I can tell don't love the game of basketball from like a couch perspective. But I don't think that's the case in the NFL. I think guys love to play the game, and I think guys actually underplay injuries they have just so they could get out onto the field. And you never see that in basketball. People are so passive in basketball. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that because they want to keep their careers going further, but there's a lot more passion in the NFL. But my thing with the NFL is there hasn't been as many good games this year to this point. And there's, like, for example, no ties this year. There's been a lot less overtime games I could think of this year than in years past. And a lot of the matchups that like we have talked about, like prior to the season, like, oh, I'm going to be watching this game, like it completely imploded. For example, like Ravens and Chargers the other night, like that really wasn't that great of a game, honestly. And like one of the best games of the year, ironically, was the Browns and the Steelers. Like, who would have saw that coming?
Totally.
I mean, I will say that the game of the year so far was probably the Eagles-Bills.
I think it's a good time to talk about it. This was as great of a game as we saw this year. Complete offensive showdown. not a lot of defense, but no one ever complains about less defense being played.
Yeah.
Josh Allen had the best game of his season this year.
Mm-hmm.
And Jalen Hurts just finished more clutch.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, from an Eagles perspective, I'm scared about their defense, and I'm also scared about their offense. But I'm more concerned about the defense because I don't know how many third down conversions past 7 yards they had that converted.
Yeah. It was a lot.
It was a lot. Like a lot. Like more than 4.
I think every single time they got in a 3rd and 7 or longer, the Bills converted it.
Yeah, sounds about right, which is really bad because like the Bills have been struggling this year as a team.
Well, they are the number 1 third down conversion offense in the NFL.
Yeah, as a whole, they've been struggling.
Yeah,
6 and 6.
I mean, I don't know if. Yeah, no, they
6 and 6
whole,
for the Bills is bad.
But I will say I'm not too concerned about the Eagles' defense because yes, the third down conversions definitely raise an eyebrow. Yeah. But it was the Eagles have been pretty good on third down for defense, so I think it's a little bit uncharacteristic. But the main thing why the defense looked so bad was because they were on the field for 40 minutes in this game. I mean, here's the thing, man. Here's the thing. The Eagles' defense was giving their offense chances in the first half, and the offense was sputtering, straight sputtering.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you got to the second half, the Bills already had momentum on offense, so I think holding them to 17 points in the second half in overtime is fine. It's not good, definitely not bad. It's fine. The offense was exceptional in the second half, and it was absolutely abysmal in the first half. But here's the thing. The Eagles just keep winning games. They are not supposed to win. Like, you're telling me the Bills controlled the ball for 40 minutes and 30 seconds, had 505 total yards of offense, 29 first downs, 1 turnover, and you only sacked them twice. You're telling me you won that game? It's unbelievable. Like, this Eagles team is incredible. It's incredible.
Incredibly stressful to watch.
Oh, totally. But these are games like that you should not win in the NFL, and yet the Eagles continuously, over and over and over again, find ways to win these types of games against amazing opponents. Like, the Bills are still a great team.
Yeah.
The Chiefs are a great team. Miami, great team. Dallas even, great team. And the Eagles, over and over and over again, win these games that they should not win if you look at the box score. But they're the better team.
I don't think you can stress enough that like Brian Johnson had one of his worst play calling games the other day.
First half.
Yeah, but like, first half. But like, how do you win a game with that play calling? Like, period.
Well, I mean,
against a team like that, you said all the stats.
Yeah,
like,
right. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. I mean, I mean, the main reason is their quarterback is
Jalen Hurts.
I mean, that dude is unbelievable. Every time I'm like, Jalen doesn't have it this game. Jalen is not looking good this game.
It was a clutch.
It's like, the game ends. I'm like, Jalen was incredible.
Yeah.
He was freaking incredible. What was he, 4 of 11 in the first half?
Yeah.
14 for 20 with 4 touchdowns in the second half in overtime. It's unbelievable.
He has the clutch gene, and
he really does.
Yeah.
He really does. It's unfreaking believable.
Even last year in the Super Bowl, you will not find like a Super Bowl virgin play that well.
No,
again.
No, right. No. And it's like, and going up on Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he outdueled the best quarterback in the league. And the thing is, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs should not have won that game when you look at the box score. Eagles with more yards, with more time in possession, things like that.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs found the way to win the game because they were the best team in the league last year. Mm-hmm. And for people to say that the Eagles are frauds right now, it's totally baseless. And you honestly, not to question anyone's intelligence, but you're an idiot if you think that. This is sustainable, and they're the best team in the NFL.
Okay, the only way they lose is if the people in the organization outside the players make them lose.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. Yeah.
But that is a big concern because as we can see over the season, I think that could happen very easily.
Like what?
Bad play calling. Mm-hmm. If we don't stay healthy, but that's a given with any team. But basically, the bad play calling.
Yeah. I think,
and the defense.
Sirianni, I think, is going to take over play calling on key moments and key drives.
Do you think he did in the second half? I kind of get the sense he did.
Been doing it.
Yeah, I get the sense he did.
Or at least like giving Johnson a script, you know. Yeah.
So, yeah, as bad as you guys say the play calling has been, and there's been times where there's been some questionable play calling, the only really, really bad offensive game was the Jets game, which is one they lost.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, like, the offense, to me, yeah, there's been some questionable play calling. However, they still have scored over 20 points in every single game outside the Jets one.
Yeah.
That's not something that a lot of good NFL teams do, but they're a great team that's able to put that up. And yet, at certain points, the defense hasn't played the best that we've seen them, especially when you compare them to last year. However, in a lot of games, they still had 2 possession leads until late.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, for me, the Bills game, the reason that it ended the way that it did was because they couldn't stop Josh Allen.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened for Allen to decide that he was going to take over running the ball, because I just haven't seen that from him this year.
Yeah.
But he did, and he did an awesome job with it.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's, to me, when it comes down to the third downs, was that they just couldn't stop Josh Allen. It wasn't that they couldn't stop the Bills. It was that they couldn't stop one guy.
Yeah.
And when you look at a lot of the league, there's not a lot of guys are that fast, that physical at quarterback.
Yeah, totally.
And to me, it's not as big as concern when you look at it from that perspective, in my opinion.
I definitely agree with you, Aiden. And like the other thing is, with the situation the Bills were in, 6-5 going into that game, needing a win to get to you're desperate. The quarterbacks like Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, I mean, they win those games. Like, that is the game they win. And Josh Allen was showing that. Like, he was nearly perfect. Nearly. I mean, 29 for 51 isn't great. And the one pick, like, okay. But he was still stellar. I mean, he was as close to perfect as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Eagles to hold them off and win that game, I'm incredibly impressed.
Yeah.
Because Josh Allen, I mean, it looked like Josh Allen had a will that game. Like, he was possessed by God, I believe. Because he was unbelievable.
Yeah, he's such a cunt. He lost me fantasy.
Dude, I did not expect 40 points.
I was going to win if he didn't do that.
No,
I really thought I was going to win there.
I was so angry because, like, before the 425 games, I was looking like I was going to win, and then Bijan went off for you.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure another guy did in the 1 o'clock. And
Nico.
Yeah, Nico. Yeah. And you kind of, like, took control of it. And then Josh Allen.
Yeah, you needed 60 by half.
Yeah, Pacheco. Like, Pacheco went off. They won me that fantasy game. Yeah. And, I mean, it's been a struggle for you. I mean, you're kind of like the Bills right now.
Dude,
desperate every week.
Okay, I was looking today. Like, I have the second most points allowed.
Yeah, I
know. It's like...
No, I remember one year in fantasy, it was probably like 2 years ago now. I was like 500. I missed the playoffs, and I scored the most points in the league. But I scored the most points in the league by far. And then my points against was like, no, I was at 2,500 and no one was at 2,000. It was that was the highest discrepancy I've ever seen. And I didn't make the playoffs that year. If you guys remember that Tyreek Hill play where like he was falling in the end zone and they just thought it was incomplete.
Oh yeah,
and like,
I do remember that.
Dude, that play kept me out of the playoffs because it lost me the game that I needed to win.
Damn.
Yeah.
Aiden, you better watch out though. You're 4 points behind me in points scored.
I know. Dude, my team's been stressing me out because I'm still like a game behind making the playoffs, but also 2 games from being in last. So I either need to win a game or hope people just keep losing the next 2 weeks. I'm good.
Yeah.
I want to knock Brennan down because the Waffle House was his idea.
Yeah. When he won a couple games in a row there, he was feeling it.
Yeah.
He's being all cocky about it, and him and I have the same record, and I'm not trying to put my team's great.
Yeah.
But I mean, still, he's talking way too much to have that type of record.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that I feel like there are more people fighting for the Waffle House challenge than the actual championship. Like, I've got a little breathing room, but not enough.
Yeah.
Owen and Josh basically fighting for the championship, and that's it.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm there, but my team is not as consistent as them. Like Gene, it feels like Gene puts up 140 every week. I can't do that.
Yeah, no, Gene's racist though. He's all white players. Okay, I think the last question I have for you guys is Josh Dobbs. Do you think his insanity runs over?
I really hope not, but wow. That looked terrible. And he lost in that game. I mean, you can't give the ball away that many times. 4 interceptions. I don't know if he fumbled, did he?
No, I don't think so.
The 4 interceptions, you just can't do that to your team.
Yeah.
You know? And it's kind of weird. Like, he looked so good with knowing none of the playbook, and then he
learns the playbook, against the Bears.
Yeah. I mean, the Bears, I did want to say this, though. Like, the Bears have been playing better. Not good, but they've been playing a lot better than they were, I think, earlier in the year. So, I don't know. But they definitely still should have beat that team. Like, I kind of thought the Vikings were going to have a game like the Lions, struggling in the first half and then, fighting your way back in the second half. But they fought. It was so short. It just was not enough.
Yeah. I really thought that the Bears shouldn't have won that game.
No.
I was watching both of them like, oh, they're not winning.
Mm-hmm.
Especially after that touchdown was scored. There was no way. And then for them to just go march on the field like that, it proved to me that Justin Fields, even when he has a really, really bad game, which he did, and I'm not saying that Josh Dobbs didn't have a bad game because his game was way worse, but still, for Fields to have a moment like that, I think that shows that he could be something.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Bears will actually make the right decisions because they just historically have not.
Yeah.
But they do have playmakers on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. And if they can put something of substance together in the next couple of years, I think they could be as competitive as we thought they were going to be a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Like, as competitive as we thought after they finished 12-4.
Yeah. But they have to be consistent about it. And unfortunately, they're not. And unfortunately, a lot of decisions they make no sense to me. As we talked about last week with them trading the second pick for Claypool and also not signing David. Like, when you make decisions like that, it just makes me lose faith in you as an organization.
Me too.
But they do have pieces there that could put it together. I think, though, that they will need a new head coach. And again, I don't like calling for people's jobs, but I do not think that the current head coach they have right now is doing the job. And I think that they need to figure out someone to bring in, even though, again, historically, the head coaches they brought in have not been very good.
Right. And their coach is Eberflus, correct? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, he just has not impressed. And I think that when you are coming in as a defensive coach, especially a defensive head coach, your defense better look good. Like, the thing is, if Justin Fields was the only reason you're losing games,
right,
I can understand it, but your defense doesn't really look good.
Mm-hmm.
No. And the thing that concerns me about the Bears every time we mention a new head coach, I thought Nagy was fine. I think after the double doink, he just sort of got too focused on that and lost direction. But, like, they've hired John Fox when Fox was well past his prime. Mark Trestman might be one of the worst head coaching signings in the last decade that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
Like, that was probably the worst one that comes to mind.
Yeah, definitely. Because at least Nagy got them to the playoffs a couple of times.
Yeah. Trestman was it was really bad.
Yeah.
But then when you look past that, still some of their coaching, it's just, to me, it's weird that other organizations, like even the Vikings, got Kevin O'Connell, and he's been, in my opinion, one of the best head coaches, most underrated head coaches, when you look at everything that he's done with the Vikings the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Bears can't get guys like that, I just don't understand what their criteria is for head coaches compared to other NFL teams that have been more successful in the last couple of years signing head coaches.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, they interviewed, like when they fired Nagy, they interviewed a couple coaches that went on, that they passed on. And
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they interviewed Sirianni even, and I've never heard a thing about Sirianni until the Eagles hired him. But again, mistake, because he looks like a really good coach. There are others that I'm forgetting. Who's Mike McDaniel? They interviewed Mike McDaniel, and they didn't give it to him, which is surprising.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you look at the amount of head coaches hired in the last 2 to 3 years, probably the one that Doug's, obviously that wasn't shocking at all that he was going to go back after a year. Mm-hmm. Shane Serkin, I think, has been overly impressive with Indianapolis. Yeah. And the Eagles' offense was great last year, the same way it's really, really good this year. And I didn't know how certain would be as a head coach just because I hadn't heard him talked about nearly as much as Jonathan Gannon was. But he seems to have a locker room together where last year that locker room was in shambles.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
And to put that team together and have them in a wild card position, it's unbelievable what he's done with that team.
Yeah, agreed.
Do you guys have anything else? My feet are frozen.
Nah, I'm good.
I'm all good.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll do it for this week. We'll catch you next week.